Hello, and welcome to Press F to Discuss, a podcast where we play video games and then talk about them for way too long. I'm Matthew.
Now I'm Toby Fox.
Damn it, you stole my bit.
We had to record the opening of this podcast 3 times.
And I had the most organic bit.
Yeah, we got it.
Today we're talking about Undertale.
Yeah, if it wasn't clear. Indie darling.
Yeah, RPG 2015.
Yeah.
Sold like millions
of copies. A bajillion
copies.
Yeah, so Undertale is a 2015 RPG by Toby Fox and no one else. I mean, there were some people who did like art designs, but it's mostly just Toby Fox.
And to be clear, this is not Toby Fox.
Yeah, in case it wasn't clear, Toby Fox is not on this podcast. A game...
We're getting him to talk about Doom.
A game about pasta and feeling bad.
And genocide.
Yeah, and genocide. It's like, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably know what Undertale is, but, you know, in the odd case you haven't, it is a cute little RPG, made in RPG Maker, I think. So
it's actually not made in RPG Maker.
Oh, isn't it?
No, I looked that up. It's one of those RPGs that looks like
it's an RPG that looks like it was made in RPG Maker, and you star as a human who you name yourself, who falls into the underground, which is full of monsters, and you have to make your way home through a cast of lovable characters, many of whom want to murder you.
Yeah, and you kind of instinctively want to murder them.
Well, and that's up for some debate.
Heart of Darkness style.
Yeah, I still think the whole, like, getting you to kill people thing is all, like...
Yeah, that's... Well, I guess I'll talk about what I think of the game.
Yeah, so I played this game, like, 2 days after it came out, and then...
I played it, like, 2 years after it came out.
Yeah, so...
Because he made me.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us what you think about the game?
Yeah, so, I mean, I liked it. I liked it, I would even say, a good deal.
Ooh. I didn't expect this.
Really? What did you...
Well, I just thought, like...
It was too hopeful?
Yeah, like, yeah. It's very cheery and optimistic.
I think there's an angle of that. I mean, I liked it a good deal. It's probably about relatively muted praise from me, but praise nonetheless.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty great subversion of the RPG genre and its tropes that struggles to cohere in the first 2 acts, but then comes together really, really smart in the final act.
Yeah.
And then in the second final act.
Sure, yeah.
There are some hiccups regarding, like, length and backtracking and stuff, but for the most part, it was, like, a really just well put together game in pretty much all of its aspects, including the ones that are the biggest risks, namely, well, I guess... There are going to be spoilers. So
yeah, this is a spoiler cast. We'll always be having spoilers for whatever game we're talking about.
You should definitely just play Undertale before you hear us talk about it.
It's worth playing.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say it is a very good game. And I feel like that's actually kind of an unpopular opinion in the sense that everybody is of the opinion that it's like one of the best games of all time or like it's a horrible game.
I don't know if it's a very smart game. It feels weird to categorize it as, like, the best game of all time. It's just, like, it's a game that's aware of what a game can do. Like,
right. As well as what games before it did.
Yeah.
So, I mean, tell me what you think of Undertale.
Right,
Jared,
okay.
And why you want the audience to believe that you don't read fanfic of it.
Just because I don't know what Underfell is, doesn't mean whatever, I don't care.
He does read it.
Anyway, yeah, I like this game a lot. It hasn't stuck in my memory as well as some other really notable games, but like I'm very, very fond of it. Like, it's just like a really tightly put together thing in basically all aspects. Like, it's funny in a way that I find really charming. It's sweet in a way that's, like, both not cliche and also, like, mechanically smart. Like, the whole intro sequence with Toriel where, like, she's not just being kind to you, but she's actively leading you around the tutorial so you don't have to do it because she's afraid you'll get hurt. It's just, like, it's also a game that to some degree recognizes, you know, we talked about this with Apotheon, like, you know, when you interact with a cast of characters and then kill them, like there are consequences to that.
Right.
And so that's good too. But mostly it's just like it's really charming and whimsical and like an example of smart design, like on a level that most games don't operate on. Like everyone talks about how Undertale has basically anything you can do in that game, Undertale will like have a response to it.
Yeah, I was actually noticing that. I'm usually a person that like I break games a lot, either by doing things that the game doesn't expect me to do, or like trying to sequence break them or whatever. And I actually didn't do it a whole lot in this game, and I look it up later, and it's like, well, I probably should have, because it probably would have been very rewarding.
Yeah,
so.
it invites you to sequence break.
Everything has some kind of unique response to it. It's honestly like kind of mind-boggling.
Right, and that's like cool and all, but the thing is, that's not just like isn't that wacky? Like that is core to
Right.
what the game is trying to do, and that is smart design.
Right.
Like it's careful and intelligent, and like this is what the story's about, and so here are the things that needs to happen.
Yeah, and it doesn't take any of the characteristics of games or the objects which inhabit its world. It doesn't take those for granted.
Right.
I think it tries to capitalize on them in every aspect.
Right, yeah. So, like, Undertale is in many ways a game about games to some degree, but I feel before Undertale to some degree, but like even more so after, there's been this trend of like games about games that don't like have anything to say. Like you have your Pony Islands or like the story mode of Super Hot, where it's like, oh, you're playing the game and you're killing people and you're
is that the story mode of Super Hot? I remember when I played like the Super Hot Flash demo, it was like there's some really weird bit at the end where it's like a narrator like wants you to kill yourself.
Yeah,
or something.
you're controlling some kind of real life.
Okay.
Yeah, but those are just like, don't you get it? You're playing a game, but you're in the game, and that's just it. Where Undertale is like, hey, let's sit down and have a conversation about this, like as opposed to just, don't you get it? We know that you're playing a game.
Yeah, it's more than just kind of like a conceit.
Right. Yeah, and that's.
Yeah, I mean, it's like those, but you mix in like a little bit of Spec Ops, where the game wants you to feel as though your actions of violence have consequences, a lot of which are negative.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, that'll be that. You should put that on like the back cover of Undertale. Like Undertale, it's kind of like Spec Ops.
Yeah.
That'll sell it.
And it's actually interesting. So, like, talking about that, like, Undertale's core conceit, which we haven't even talked about, but is fundamental to the way the game is designed. So, like, if you haven't played it, I mean, you should have at this point in the podcast, but whatever. There's, in any battle, like, there's 4 options. There's fight, act, item, and was it?
Mercy.
Yeah, I thought it was like peace or something. Can't remember. But, like, that forms the core.
Yeah, I mean, those are relatively standard, like, turn-based RPG options.
Right, but like that's core to everything the game is doing,
Yeah.
and it interacts with you. It has a conversation through that, like
everything that you do in the game, almost everything is filtered through either those 4 options or the actual combat option, which is the bullet hell.
Right, yeah, and so not to get like too negative or whatever, but like. I still think that, like, people talk about Undertale's, like, the most perfect game of all time, and I don't think that's true. Like, I think it's got issues.
Uh-huh.
Like, it wants you, or, like, it expects you to be, like, killing people. Like,
right. It's a weird thing, because I think Undertale is designed, because it was designed by this sort of person, I think that makes it more, you're more likely to see this sort of person in the audience, and that sort of person is the person that doesn't want to hurt things if they don't have to.
Right, yeah.
I mean, so almost like a little bit of confirmation bias, so to speak, where it's like I usually when I play games, I try to play as pacifist as possible.
Right.
I know it's something you kind of like mentioned with Dark Souls, where if you don't have to kill something, you try to avoid killing it.
Yeah.
And the fact that we go into games with that sort of predisposition means that the central hook of Undertale being that you are instinctively ready to kill things is a little underbaked as a result.
Yeah, and I think that is a thing that hurts it. Like, so when Matt was playing through this game, the first time he got to the end of the first run, he messaged me like, so what am I supposed to do about Asgore? Because that's the bit where he destroys the mercy button, which is a cool thing.
Right.
But like...
Yeah, I think even by the end of my first playthrough of the game, I still didn't quite have a good grasp on the ways that the game played with its own rules.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize, like, I mean, I should have, like, because, like, functionally that's what it is like you always need the mercy button to spare somebody.
Right.
So the fact that the mercy button is gone means like that option is gone. For some reason, I didn't like internalize that in the mechanics.
I mean, I get it too to some degree. It's confusing because the game like basically throughout the entire like everything before the true end or whatever like has these
enemies. Are you talking about the enemies?
Well, just any enemy is like, even when it seems like there's no way to peaceably resolve it, there is.
Right.
Like,
yeah. Basically, I don't know if we actually explained. Did we actually explain that the other central hook of Undertale is the fact that you don't have to kill anything.
Yeah, you can peaceably resolve every interaction.
Except in the case of Asgore, if you've killed something else up until that point, then there's no option besides.
Well, no, even if like.
Oh, actually,
even
that's right, because then you can't.
Even if you go full pacifist mode the first time through, you still have to fight him.
Oh, do you? Okay.
And then you reload, and then you have to and then you get the whole thing with
Right. Sure.
With Alphys. I mean, it's not just Asgore. Like, I think the Undyne fight has a lot of issues in that area too.
I was actually just watching somebody else play through it, and I remembered like. I had no idea. In the Undyne fight, you literally flee.
Right.
And that's like sequential.
And I think the kind of expectation is that like, or you end up killing people out of like, you know, like I have to kill them, like fight them a little bit, and then
right. In fact, that was actually one of the things when I was very early on in the game. Frogget kept on attacking me, and I was like, Jared, like. Do I have to kill it? Is like Undertale's thing going to be that it like annoys me into killing an enemy? And thankfully it wasn't, because I think that's a little, it's like funny games.
Yeah.
But although that's a different interpretation of the film than I have, but needless to say, it's a little trite to annoy your player into doing something that you then morally judge them.
And
for.
I'm not sure that's the intent.
Well, it's not, right. And so, but the thing is, like, that was the only way that I could read it at that point, because in some ways the game is almost forced to play the RPG straight so that you then fall, you know, entrapped into its logic. But you come into it with the expectations that you already know this is a game where I don't have to kill things, and that kind of reduces how effectively it can tell you to subvert that.
I mean, in some ways I think that might be expected. Like, I think the fact that it's in some ways designed around multiple playthroughs, like if you don't go completely pacifist through the whole game, like you basically have to play the game over again and not kill anyone. And the game changes like a little bit depending on like stuff you did last time.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to pay attention to that, and I had a hard time because I was like skipping through most of everything.
Yeah.
It's like it's kind of clunky in that respect.
I mean, there's only a few characters that draw like you.
Right.
You get some in-game dialogue for people that you already killed. Flowey will talk to you and like realize what's going on, and Sans will have stuff to say to you, depending on what happens. So you know that's and like. Back when I finished it, I killed one person, and it was Toriel.
Right.
Which I almost read as like the canon, like.
Yeah, I think you're supposed to, because the game like literally does trick you into killing her by insta killing her at 30 HP.
Yeah, and so I view it as canon. Like you go the first time through and get even a little, and that's also like the kill that the game judges you the least for.
Right.
Like it has the least consequences.
Right.
It's so, you know, I think it's kind of expected that you you go through once and then you kill some people and then you go back and do it peacefully a second time. And I'm not sure that's great design, but like
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the fact is, as soon as I realized that I could have even spared Toriel, I never used the fight option.
Right.
Except occasionally I would like fight and then purposefully miss because I thought that might trigger something, but I don't think it actually does.
Yeah, it doesn't ever do that, I don't think.
And so the end result is that to kill enemies, you really have to seek out to kill them.
Right. Well, that's interesting, right? So, did you watch any Genocide Run playthrough?
I did watch a couple, and
Did you get to the point where you get called out for watching a Genocide Run playthrough?
does Sans do that?
No, Flowey does that.
No, I don't.
Near the end of the game, Flowey calls you out if you're watching a Genocide Run.
He's like, does he?
He's like, I bet there are people out there who are too cowardly to follow through to this point and
Right.
could only watch.
Right.
Like, and
Yeah, I mean, and that's the game constantly, subtly breaks the fourth wall. Well, sometimes subtly, sometimes not subtly. In making every single layer of its meta, like playing it completely straight.
right, yeah.
So the characters in the game know that you're playing it. Characters in the game know that you can save and load. Characters in the game know.
Well, to different degrees.
Right, to different degrees.
Like,
Only really Flowey has like full conception.
Yeah, Sans has most of it, and Flowey has all
Sans
of
like
it.
pieces it together.
Yeah, like Sans' fight actively messes with your in-game UI.
Right. Yeah.
Slowly
I
doing
watched
damage
that,
to you and
it's,
stuff like that.
Nuts.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. But it's so all that negative stuff aside, I do think it's to some degree really intelligent because like the genocide ending, right? Which is you might think it's just you kill everything you come across. That's not true.
Yeah.
You have to kill literally everything in the underground.
Right.
And at that point, like the game changes significantly. Like characters act differently towards you. You have to like pillage towns, and like there's no one to like sell you stuff. The save points, like the cute little dialogue about filling you with determination, goes away, and it just becomes like determination in red text.
Right.
Like, because determination is one of those gameplay commentary things. Like, you as the player have the determination to do things again until you get it right, or you as the player have the determination to go against the flow of everything good
Right.
and do something awful.
Actively seek out and murder every single inhabitant.
Right, yeah. And like the game, and Toby Fox by extension, has absolutely no qualms about directly judging you for that by turning the game mechanics against you.
Right, and so that's where I think the game really excels, is when it acknowledges the player and starts breaking or bending its own rules, and kind of becoming more of a meta commentary on the game itself.
Right. Yeah. Like what are your favorite examples of that?
So I mean, I think obviously the Flowey fight is pretty great.
Yeah, I think it comes out of left field a bit, but the fight itself is great.
Right. Yeah. I mean, at this point in the game, it goes very. Is it Metal Gear Solid 2?
I think so.
Where Flowey, after you've beaten Asgore and like you've got your ending, and then Flowey like kind of pops up and is like, "Hey, remember me?" And then he like
crashes the game.
Right, crashes the game and like elevates to some eldritch horror bird thing that.
Oh yeah, that thing is like nightmarish.
Yeah, it's like Dolly meets like a ransom letter cut out of magazine paper. That just like absolutely murders you.
Yeah.
Or like up to a point, you always, and so he not only does he strip your player character of any of the power that you've had up until that point by refusing, you can't act against it, you can't even really effectively fight against it. I mean, your damage is like a pittance against it, but also it strips you, the player, of any power by saying like, look, you wish you could save, but you can't.
Yeah, because Flowey saves and loads for you.
You even wish you could keep on playing the game, but you actively have to like seek out and keep on rebooting the game, or I don't know, keep on, but reboot once or twice.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's just a really, really interesting way of going a layer deeper than I think, like you said, the Pony Islands and the Super Hots, which are fine games.
Yeah, they're fine.
In
They're
their
just
own
not...
respect. But like by taking that conceit and making it even more of a core thesis of the game, I think that's where the game really like stood out for me. There's some stuff too, and like I don't know, does True Lab gets a little bit into like meta horror because of True Lab is like, so it's like a secret you have. I think you can't get it on your first playthrough.
You have to, at minimum, if you've killed no one in your first run, you still have to fight Asgore and then as normal,
and then go back,
and then load, and then you don't even get the event with Alphys until you've killed Asgore the first time.
Okay, yeah. So you have to, in some capacity, be on your second playthrough. You have to like full pacifist and complete several side quests.
Yeah.
And you go down to this True Lab, and this kind of is the narrative underpinning of what's led to the conflict in the is the land Undertale?
It's just the underground.
The underground, right? Okay. And that has some really great moments as well, where it kind of bends your expectations of what the game's enemies and fight interface can be, right? Because like you fight like a save point, for instance.
Yeah.
Or
you fight like a speech bubble.
Right, a speech bubble. You fight. I mean, there are even like build-ups to like enemies that you think are gonna happen, and there's nothing there.
Yeah, or they're like, it just fucks with the like in this to some degree in the same way that Sans does. It fucks with the game interface.
Right.
Like
the game interface and the game like world.
Yeah.
Like by both being in the game and outside of the game.
Yeah, it does all sorts of clever stuff like having really strange, unusual attacks, or like having attacks that you think you recognize and then they warp in like really horrifying ways. Like a thing that looks like a dog and then a hole opens up in its face.
Yeah, and then it like breathes butterflies out at you that hurt you.
Or the one that like one of the monstrosities just can't fight you, like it's too broken to fight you.
Oh, right.
So it just like collapses and you just stare at it.
It's like a bug.
Yeah, it's like pathetic and sad.
And that's like that works on two levels, right? Because on one hand it's like literally supposed to be like this is broken code.
Right.
And on the other hand it's supposed to be this is in the game it's that Alphys tried to create an antidote for the monsters that had died or something.
Tried to bring monsters back to life with determination.
And it led to this just like collapsed shell of some kind of mutant living being.
Yeah.
And so it's like this double
right.
RPG thing.
It's an emotional argument playing with the mechanics of the game, which is like I think to some degree what every video game should aspire to. Like your core like storytelling should be in terms of how you play the game.
Right.
And Undertale does that again and again and again and again and again.
Yeah, it's like interface screw, but like turned up to 11.
Yeah, but
all
even
the time.
Even the stuff where it doesn't directly like mess with the interface, like it's still really smart. Like the Muffet fight.
Yeah.
Where you're jumping up and down on webs to escape spiders, and then you're like trying to climb away from a big spider, and you actually have to like you're still just in your little box. There's nothing weird interface going on.
And you're still in the in like the bullet hell schema.
Yeah, but like it conveys like what's going on physically so well. Like it's
I mean, and all of the enemies have that. All the enemies not just have like the bullet hell sprites are thematically linked. Like when you fight the airplane, you're literally fighting airplanes.
Yeah.
Or if you're fighting knights, then there are spears, or dogs have leaping dogs. But like also they kind of like represent like the emotions of the character. Like Toriel, if she doesn't want to attack you anymore, like her attacks will literally start to veer away.
Yeah,
from you.
When your health gets low, she starts avoiding you.
Yeah,
it's great.
And like they're enemies that are like kind of bashful or shy, and so their attack is more like you kind of, if you go in, they kind of like lash out at you.
Yeah, right.
So every single attack is personalized in such a thematically consistent while still being mechanically solid way.
Yeah.
It's like, so like one of the complaints I had with GTA 5 was that you played it and there are like 8 billion different game modes. This is kind of like that, but every game mode actually like is relevant.
Yeah. Well, because it never strays away from its core mechanic.
Right, the core mechanic
its,
of
yeah,
avoid the bullets.
At its heart, you are never doing anything more than press the directional buttons to. I mean, I guess during the Metaton stuff, you get like a blaster, but that's it.
True. Yeah.
Like that's the most significant deviation.
Even then, like the buttons are still you're still using Z and X, which are your core active buttons in the game.
Right, and that's just like that's.
It's simultaneously focused while still having like a wide, diverse range of emotions and kind of like sub mechanics, so to speak.
Right, that's like that's the good shit.
Right, it's just well designed game structure.
Yeah. So, pivoting off of that, I guess, like, let's talk a bit more about the actual story, because we've only kind of really beat around the bush.
Yeah, I mean, and again, we're assuming you've played Undertale, because, like, we're just kind of, like, going full steam ahead here.
We're going for it. So what do you think, like, just general impressions, what do you think about the story, like...
So, like I said, my main complaint with Undertale was that the first, like, 2 acts of the game, I think, struggle first to set themselves apart in RPGs, and also struggle to cohere with the rest of like the narrative. There are like little bits, but really it comes down to individual boss fights with Sans, with Papyrus, Undyne. Those are kind of like standout points where your actions fit into the world's narrative and they make sense.
Sure.
But other than that, like you run into a lot of enemies and it's just kind of like you're just kind of like going through. Mm-hmm. Part of that is exacerbated, I think, by by Toby's sort of absurd sense of humor, where like he'll pick up strands of humor and like call back to them.
Yeah, you called it like Tumblr humor, which I agree with to some extent.
That's not necessarily a derogatory term, but
it's a kind of absurdist, like it's very Homestucky, which is like makes
also
sense.
Toby Fox.
Yeah, Toby Fox did some of the music for Homestuck, so that tracks. But
right, and so unfortunately, in terms of story, that means that if I didn't know like this was Undertale, it's like one of the highest rated games on Steam, like critically acclaimed for 2015. I could see this being like to the moon, like where I pick it up and I play it and I just kind of like stop.
Yeah, right.
And so I think that is something that comes together better on the second playthrough when you fully know kind of what's going on and the game lets you in a little bit more.
Yeah.
Overall, especially towards the end of the second playthrough, it gets very anime in its story. Like you literally fight a flying rainbow demon that you are protected by the 7 hearts of your friend or the 6 hearts of your friends.
Did you say anime is real or anime is not real?
I said anime is not real because anime is not real. And that's not necessarily like something I can fault the game for. It's just not a personal style that I, really stick to. In fact, I would even say that that's better than the first 2 acts of the first playthrough because at least it kind of has a consistent theme and style that kind of fits narratively.
Right. Yeah.
But I do think that was something that because the game is trying to subvert your expectations while also entice you, it's a really difficult balancing act that unfortunately doesn't always stick the landing. Right.
So I agree and disagree to some extent. I like the beginning more than you do, I think, in the sense that, like, I was fine with the surface level narrative because I think the individual character stuff is compelling enough that, like, I remember really liking the tutorial the first time I played it because it's just so, like, warm.
Right.
Like, I was smiling every time that Toriel, like, ushered you to safety or, like, called you to make sure you're doing okay or... little stuff like that. Like, and then, I was okay with the surface level narrative of just this kid trying to get out with no grant or whatever.
Right.
So I didn't have a ton of problems, like, or I didn't think it was as unfocused as you felt it was.
Sure.
But at the same time, there is that grander narrative, which is not really like I remember thinking when I finished the game the first time through that Flowey fight just comes out of nowhere.
Right.
Like, because you don't have any idea that there's like a greater, not conspiracy, but like a greater narrative.
Well, yeah, you assume it's the same. It's like a surface level, and that's what we were saying. Like the game goes 2 or 3 degrees deeper.
Yeah, like
you would expect.
Flowey shows up at the beginning, and then if you're observant, you can catch him like watching you throughout the game.
Right.
But like then he just doesn't appear at all again till the end. It's like, here we are back again. There's like a
right, and that in the first playthrough that'd be like that doesn't like that's kind of like cheap storytelling.
Yeah,
But in the second playthrough, it makes a little bit more sense because you understand who Flowey is, and
yeah, when you view the broader context of it, it feels more sensical. But like when you're going through, it's just jarring, which I don't think is super great.
yeah, I mean, and that's kind of the fatal weakness. I mean, it's not fatal, but the weakness of subverting player expectations is there has to be a period of time where you're kind of yanking the player's chain, and unfortunately, how noticeable or how kind of dragging it is can influence how satisfying the payoff is. In this case, the payoff is super satisfying, but you're still also like, that was kind of like boring,
Right?
or disheveled.
Yeah, it's like whenever people talk about the idea of deconstruction in general, like, which is not a term I advocate going around using a bunch because it's frequently terrible and misused.
I think it's a great term.
It's okay sometimes, but internet nerds will use it terribly and like, isn't this great because it's deconstruction of like, isn't Batman versus Superman great because it's a deconstruction of superhero?
I meant in like the architectural sense of breaking stuff down.
Of course. Okay. Anyway, so like, I think if you're gonna do something where you build something and then disassemble the consumer, the viewer, the player's take on it, you have to make the surface level thing engaging first.
Right.
Because if you don't understand why that works, then like you flipping it on its head and saying, but actually it's wrong, doesn't mean anything. And I think Undertale does to some degree, but like, if anything, I would say it invests too much on its surface level and not enough on like building up to the flip.
Right. The flip itself is great.
Yeah.
And the surface level is like, there's a lot there, but it's kind of, like I said, it feels distracting as a result.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think it basically manages to carry itself on fun characters and interactions, but there is like in the, what is it, the water area.
Yeah, the caves.
Yeah.
Or the waterfall.
Yeah, in Waterfall, like, there's a lot of, like, quiet, like, walking around. And you get filled in on the background of the world to some degree, but, like, it's still kind of a little bit slow.
Well, yeah, and that's why, like, piecemeal, it's a different beast, because I think I really liked, like, the atmosphere of Waterfall.
Oh, yeah, like, quiet, somber.
Right. It's just that it didn't always feel like it was kind of, like, moving in a direction that made narrative sense.
Sure, yeah. I've heard that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, it's going to come down to personal taste, like, how well you kind of feel carried by the characters. Like, personally, I didn't necessarily think the game was super funny, because I think I have just a different idea of what is funny, but, like, if I had, maybe it would have flowed a lot better.
Sure.
I mean, it seems like you were kind of like more along that path, so it was.
Yeah. I think the game is really, really funny.
Yeah. So it just kind of cohered better for you, and I guess that that's where a lot of art in general comes down to those subjective terms.
Yeah. Sure. So it's a good story. I do like it overall, but I think the general like internet opinion remembers that like super strong ending and not some of the weaker.
Right, which is there's a sociological term for that, and I don't remember what it is, but it's like basically we characterize experiences by really what the
we
last
felt at the end.
Yeah, the last third or last fifth or what have you.
Yeah.
And we people probably I do that for games all the time, and I'm certain people do it for Undertale.
Right.
But yeah, I mean it's serviceable. The flip is really satisfying. The question is, could the flip have been any more satisfying?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right. I think that's kind of where our.
Yeah, I'm in all honesty like hoping that Toby Fox makes another game at some point. Like I'm more interested to see.
Oh well, the Earthbound.
That he made that before this, and he doesn't want anyone to ever talk about that again.
I don't remember. Did you try to make me play that because you had played Undertale?
It came to my attention because I'd played Undertale, and I'm like, oh
yeah, because I was trying to think like I don't think I would have come like I don't play a lot of RPGs in the Earthbound style, so
yeah. If you ever come across Toby Fox's Undertale hack, or Undertale hack, Earthbound hack,
it's called Undertale.
Yeah, it's called Undertale. Do yourself a favor. Like, he basically has a summary / rundown of the hack on his website. Just read that.
Oh, I should read that. Yeah.
And like that's fascinating. The game itself is mediocre. Like, there's a lot of grinding and
Yeah,
like,
that was really the weakness of the game, was that there was a lot of grinding. But
Yeah.
that's a different game.
Yeah. The point being, like, I'd be interested to see the thing that Toby Fox makes next. Like,
Yeah, and he's expressed a lot of actually kind of like concern about.
oh yeah, because he's afraid that now
Yeah.
he made like
'Cause
the
he's a
internet's
human.
favorite thing ever.
Right. And I mean, a lot of Undertale centers around like feelings of weakness and insufficiency. So I imagine that's coming out of somewhat of a legitimate place for Toby.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it could be put in context with knowing that he was the person that made that Earthbound hack. You do see like a trajectory with his work.
Sure. Like, I would love to see, because the horror segments in this, I think, are excellent. Like, they're really good.
I think I mean, I guess you would call the Flowey fight hard.
Yeah, that's like scary and
and the True Lab is creepy.
and like the Gaster stuff. If you come across it, is genuinely like, this is really weird.
Right. I mean, so the Gaster stuff. Let's talk about like a little bit about like internet urban legends and like the feeling that is that what that is?
Yeah, it's like an intentionally constructed urban legend. Like,
Right.
Because you can't.
It feels like I felt when I discovered Slender Man at like the age of 8.
Yeah, also same. I love
Or
Slender Man
however old
before,
that was.
not to sound hipstery, but before it became like a meme.
Yeah.
Like, so for those unaware, Gaster is canonical. Like, Gaster exists in the world of Undertale, but not in a traditional sense.
He doesn't like physically inhabit the game space like the rest of the characters
Yeah,
do.
you can run into someone that might be him once if you're lucky. But
You have to like go into the game files and like edit
I
stuff.
think you can run into most stuff without altering game files now, but it's
Oh,
incredibly
okay.
circumstantial. So like, basically, he's hinted to be. He used to be the head scientist before Alphys, and he might be Sans' brother or father or something. There's like,
She's Papyrus.
yeah,
Papyrus is gas.
that's right. There's strange characters you can run into if like a variable in your game is set right.
Right, which I thought required tinkering, but
Yeah, well, it changes based on certain events. So,
Okay.
like, you might run into someone who says something like, who's talking about Gaster and says, like, he was a genius, but he fell into the core, and then he trails off and he says, like, oh, well, I'll refrain. It's not nice to talk about someone who's listening.
Yeah.
And that's, like, weird, creepy. And then, like, if you leave the screen and come back, he's gone.
right.
Or, like, there's, you know, all sorts of stuff hidden in the game files. Like, Sans uses a strange, like, laser attack that comes out of these skulls that look suspiciously like a skull in the True Lab, and then their name in the files of the game is Gaster Blaster.
Right.
And it's just like, he clearly exists in the story, but you can only piece together maybe what he is by like operating on the meta level, which is fascinating. Like,
yeah. Is he supposed to like potentially be Toby Fox himself?
I don't
Or-
think. I think the dog is.
Oh, that's
Toby
right.
Fox.
That's right. The dog is supposed to be one of the dogs is supposed to be Toby Fox, right? But in some sense, so he's supposed to be like an omnipotent architect
Yeah.
of the game.
Well, I don't
of
know about
Undertale.
that, but he exists like on or beyond the level that the player exists on.
Right.
Like beyond determination and like
Right.
shit like that.
Yeah, and I mean, and that again, that kind of weird someone's watching you feeling is something that you can get in horror games sometimes, but for the most part, it's like not something that's super explored.
Yeah. And like
And it's
this,
like super interesting.
yeah, and to intentionally construct, because normally this kind of experience is related to like people data mining and saying, oh, this used to be in the game, like
Right, stuff used to be in the game, or like literally just like making up.
yeah.
You know.
But Undertale has a part of its story, canonical story, that is designed around being data mined.
Right.
Like that is wild.
It's a game I think that could only have been created by somebody who grew up on those kinds of things, right?
Well, I mean, even when the game came out, there was like one of the PNGs in the game was like if you spoil anything, I will kill you or something.
Yeah,
like that.
right. That's right.
He changed it at some point after the game came out, but
Yeah. I mean, it it's this weird sense of like once again the game being like a little bit deeper than you thought it was.
Yeah, every time it
You think it bottoms out.
yeah, it steps back to another level of awareness. Like, I'm aware that this game is a series of files resting on your computer.
Right.
Like, that's the level that Gaster exists on.
Yeah.
And that's like, that is next level, like, horror. That's like...
Yeah, I mean, it's existential horror in the way that, I mean, I think Funny Games does a little bit of the camera as voyeur, but
all right.
we don't have to argue about Haneke. But yeah, it's an existential horror that not only does it like exist in the game's like functional existence as a media,
Sure.
or as a medium, but also it can only exist in a game.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't something that, I mean, at best this is something you could like read about online and you get that kind of urban legend feeling, but it's like it physically inhabits like a space on your computer.
Yeah.
In this sense.
Yeah, there's all sorts of great bits that like confirm that. So there's Easter eggs when you're starting a game. Like if you set your name to be various characters, like you get like odd bits of dialogue and stuff.
Yeah, characters within.
Yeah,
the game
if you set your name to Gaster, it boots you back to the title screen.
Yeah.
Without saying anything, and that's just like that's great. Like
yeah.
Or like the boat lady talks about the man who speaks in hands, which is, you know, it's just all...
Is that surmised to be Gaster?
Yeah, because Gaster talks in wingdings.
Ah, okay.
It's just, it's smart. Like, and I would love to see Toby Fox make a proper horror game.
Right. And I guess speaking of, like, being smart as a game, is it because I am just, like, not a creative person that... I'm trying to think, like, what other ways could this, like, could games be deconstructed and then, like, turned on their head?
Right.
In terms of a meta sense of their functionality. It's like I'm not really like, did Toby Fox, like, finish video games for us? Like, that's it, boys. But, like, are there other games that are so uniquely positioned to do this?
Without getting into spoilers, Nier Automata does a bit with it.
Okay.
And other games have... to some extent, I think.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
Spec Ops does a little bit.
Spec Ops does like a tiny bit with like the loading screens.
The loading screens and like and the credits like list you as like
right, yeah, because like Spec Ops knows that you're a player playing the game because you see loading screens that only you see. And you see credits that only you see. But beyond that, it's not really like, you know, this is a third person squad shooter. Or whatever.
Well, so this is my crack theory about that, right? That like. I think that not necessarily that turning on its head, but that awareness that you're playing a video game is like the future of many video game storytelling. Because like not necessarily every game. Like a game could be like a good facade or whatever, like just surface level engagement. But I think there's a lot of depth to be like extracted from games that know this is how you interact with the world, and understanding that that's like a metaphor,
right? In
the way that Undertale understands that your like bullet hell thing is a metaphor for you doing stuff in the real world,
right?
So like I don't know if future games would do stuff differently, but like even just engaging in that same way, like there's so much more you could do with that. I think.
Yeah, I mean that I hope so, because I think it has the potential to be really interesting on an artistic and mechanical level. I'm just wondering, like, knowing that, like, Undertale is a 3 to 6 hour game that was made by, like, one dude.
In 3 years? Like, that's wild.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, just wondering, like, how much more is there to that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be something. Like, I think, you know, not to... I'm gonna use this reference, and I'm gonna use it in a way that's appropriate. Don't at me.
Is it gonna be an anime reference?
No.
Okay.
Like this is Citizen Kane in the sense that Citizen Kane was like one of those movies
redefined.
In that it took movies beyond just like filmed plays and like said, here's stuff you can do with cinematography, and
right.
And so like I think Undertale is Citizen Kane in its like here's things you can do with the mechanics. Here's how you can engage more directly with like an emotional argument that is being made.
It's like the Yeezus of games.
Yes, the Yeezus of games. Couldn't put it any better myself.
Put it on the back. It's like Yeezus and Spec Ops.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's really where the game shines.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you have anything else you wanted to add?
I don't know. I just want to briefly touch on the ending because I like it a lot.
The anime ending.
Yeah, the anime ending. But like, just like how.
So the ending of the game is you go through the whole pacifist run again because like Flowey challenged you to do it, and you finally you accomplish it, and it's like everybody's there, everybody's happy. And then, like, Flowey's like, haha, like, suckers.
Flowey steals everyone's souls and takes his form as Azrael, not actually your friend, but
right.
The person you're named after, their friend.
And so it's another battle, but in this case, you're able to pull on the resources of your friends by going back and, like, saving them.
Right,
well,
but,
not
like...
going back, but, going
like,
in and saving
I think, like, that's also cool, too. Like, I just want to talk about how cool it is, because... in many ways, the game is constantly being flipped to put you at a disadvantage. Like
Undyne takes away your ability to move.
Yeah, but, like, in this, like, it runs that same, like, mechanics manipulation in the other direction. Like, it empowers you. Your act button becomes a save button. Like,
right.
Or at the beginning, your act option just has hope and dream. And that's just, like, that's like, wonderful and kind. And, like, and it's, then you get to interact directly with the characters and save them by being like drawing on your friendships with them, and it's just like it's playing with mechanics in a way that's no longer like upsetting your expectations, but like you did it, you made it this far,
right.
Now like take control and like push forward and become something better.
Yeah, which is where I guess too hopeful for me. I would have stopped half a beat earlier where Flowey won, he outmaneuvered you, and you're all
and
dying.
Friendship dies.
Yes. No, but again, even if it's not necessarily something that I, philosophically think is super realistic, it's still, like you said, it's an inversion of the game's mechanics.
Yeah, it's a
in a way that empowers the player for once.
Yeah, it's a compelling change of expectation for the player, and that's just cool. Like,
yeah.
it's a warm, happy thing. Like, back when Awesome Games Done Quick was running this last winter, Undertale was either the final event or close to the final event, and like just watching that is so fascinating. Like, people just get so into it. Like,
oh, yeah?
People really, really love watching the ending of that game. It's so like it's just so good. Like,
yeah. I mean, Undyne and Alphys were designed for shippers.
Yeah.
So I don't know what kind of overlap there is with AGDQ and ship.
Yeah, it's just
communities, but
it's intelligent and it's kind, and that's basically the most compact thing I can say about Undertale.
Yeah,
like, that's a rare enough thing.
I mean, the most compact thing I could say about it is like it's a game.
Yeah, there you go.
You've done it.
And that yeah. So that's all I've got.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good game. Don't be put off by the very exuberant fan base.
Yeah.
But also don't let them like get your expectations too high, because it will not cure cancer. But it is quite a good game, and the soundtrack, I do have to just say, is really great.
The soundtrack is really freaking good.
Its use of motifs in particular is like just very cognizant again of itself as a medium.
Yeah, when you start to realize where songs pop up and
right.
like how they pop up, it's
a good game.
Yeah,
worth $10 to $5 or whatever usually. Well, because it's $10 usually, but it goes on sale.
It was only $10, wasn't it?
No, it's usually the game itself is.
It's $10. That is.
I mean, hey, look, now I know that Toby Fox has more money than I ever will.
Yeah, he could never make a game for the rest of his life. And
all he did was make this game.
It's just like the Stardew Valley guy.
Right.
Anyway, so I guess that'll do it for us. Join us next week for Gag to Come simulators. I feel like I use simulators a lot in this end thing.
Well, because simulators are really useful.
Yeah, because it can be a simulator of anything.
Yeah. Join me for like pre-calculus simulator.
Yeah. Dwarf Fortress clones, something. Anyway.
Those are a real thing, though.
Yeah, fuck off. I'm Jared.
I'm Matthew.
And this has been Press F to Discuss.